Hi, my name is Jordan Waite, and for my capstone, I'm talking about the impact of guidance counselors in 2 school districts. I chose this topic because I had a guidance counselor in high school, and she really changed my life. It was in my freshman year of college that I decided that I was going to change my major to become a guidance counselor. My brother had her as well and really seemed to struggle throughout most of his school career, and so my thought process was to look into guidance counselors as a whole and see what can be done for all students. For my introduction, I cover race, social class, and sociologists such as Foucault, Durkheim, and Marx. I go into Foucault and his thought on surveillance. I go into Durkheim and his thoughts on beliefs and values in the school system, and then Marx's bourgeoisie and proletariat classes. As for schools have changed over time from colonial days to present day, in the beginning they started out as one-room schools for males to either become ministers or doctors. No children of color or women were present at this time. Then the evolution of Southern schools opened basic reading and writing classes that allowed for some women to be in those classes, but still mostly no people of color. Then the Reconstruction era after the Civil War allowed for both whites and blacks to be in school as long as they were segregated. It wasn't until after the Civil Rights Movement that more became available. And then for my sociological approaches, I go into conflict theory, structural functionalism, and critical perspective. What is sociology of education? It examines the intersections between the educational institutions, other social institutions, power, and individual experiences based on demographic divisions. Again, I go into how Foucault's theory talked about surveillance and how it was the government's way of watching over the school, that the schools were supposed to report back so the government knew exactly what students were doing, how they were testing, and how they could better watch over them. Where Durkheim's theory was talking about beliefs and values. So the teachers would talk to the students about what the government wanted them to talk about so that when the students got out of school, they would be better prepared for how the government wanted them to live their lives. This is a little excerpt of my capstone where I talk about the different generations, mostly millennials, silent generation, baby boomers, and Gen Xers. Here's a little quote I have. Among millennials, around 4 in 10, 39% of those ages 25 to 37 have a bachelor's degree or higher compared to just 15% of the silent generation, roughly a quarter of baby boomers, and about 3 in 10 Gen Xers, 29%, when they were the same age. So this is basically just showing that education is getting more available and more people want to go into education versus other generations, and that it's really a privilege that people are able to do that today. To go back to Karl Marx's theory, it really made me think about the lower class and the upper class and what was available for education. If you're in a lower class, you might not be able to afford as much education. You might have to drop out versus somebody who's in a higher class system. And it's really all about resources. What can you afford and what can the school afford to give you that best possible education, which is why I have poverty equals education type. Because most likely if you're in poverty, you're not getting the same education that somebody who is not in poverty is getting. I also have the chart next to it to show that the lighter blue 2012 and the darker 2008 and the different age groups are showing what is available for the 2 years as far as percentages of adults in each group who are in lower classes. So as you can see, in 2012, more people were in lower classes no matter their age versus 2008. And then this shows too what the college or schooling level is like. More people are going into education, but that just leaves them farther into debt. Segregation affected schools because there was a lot of stigma around certain color. So the children of color were not getting the same education as white children got because many people didn't believe that they would amount to as much as somebody who was white. Not only was it outside public and students who were holding this stigma, but teachers as well. They might not have given a student of color the same education because they believed that they didn't know something that a white child should. The methods I used were the longitudinal study, which is an observation over a long or short period of time. I found this to be best just because you're getting students basically from when they start school to what they do after high school. I found this information in the census, school websites, and other databases. And I was looking for military/school enrollment and careers and emotional issues within students' lives. Guidance counselors do a lot. They not only help with educational goals, but they're really there to help you with whatever you need, whether it be personal or school related. I did find two different ratios in my study. One was for the ASCA, which was a ratio of 250 students per one counselor. And then the other one was for School Counselors Matter, which was 464 students per one counselor. I think it really is decided based on which school you go to. Saratoga is a little bit bigger, so I feel like they would have more of the 464 students per one counselor. And then Corinth is a lot smaller, so they'd have about the 250 students per one counselor. So again, it's just based off of resources, how many counselors can you afford. I found that Corinth had about like 3 counselors and Saratoga had about 5. So it really is all about resources. And then I go in to find what the students are doing after school, as far as military goes. And more males went into the military than females even today, at 81.9% for males and 18.1% for females. You can see that over here in the chart. A majority were white, but there were a few percentages of other races and ethnicities as well. And then I also went into the mental health between male and females. Males were often not talking about their mental issues just because they wanted to be more towards the stereotype that males aren't allowed to talk about their feelings. They were more aggressive and just not as open, where females were said to be more emotional and were supposed to be open. So we did find that more females were able to talk about their feelings versus males. In my second section for findings, I found that there was no proper training for guidance counselors who were handling students with disabilities. About 62% of guidance counselors actually had a program. Well, there were 62% of programs that actually talked about disabilities, which seems like a lot, but that means that not every single guidance counselor was getting the information they needed to even talk about disabilities in the slightest sense. And then they said that they were in the wrong type of work because there were so many students and there was such a diversity that they could really be helping all students, but there was a selection on who they were able to help because they weren't getting that training. What needs to be done for students who need extra help? They might need extra help in the classroom, at home, their parents might need a resource, and because of this, the guidance counselors really didn't have that information to help them. As far as what parents see versus what their children see, there was one article where the parent talked about, as a student, they didn't really see what their guidance counselor did. It wasn't until they had children of their own that they saw that their guidance counselor was helpful in not only helping the students, but the parents as well. So as you get older, you really do find that the guidance counselors do a lot more than just paperwork. but they could be doing even more. And then in the summary, I go back into Saratoga Springs High School in Corinth. And Saratoga is definitely a more expensive area, has higher education taxes, and Corinth is smaller, more personal interactions, but it is higher in poverty. The total population is under 3,000 for Corinth, and the poverty rate is at 14.6%, as you can see in the chart, versus Saratoga's almost 28,000 and 5.02% poverty rate. Saratoga does make a lot in not only education taxes, but they have the races and they are a tourist site. So I feel like it really helps them a lot when they're trying to bring in income, and they overall are bigger and have more jobs than Corinth has. For my discussion and conclusion, I go back into Foucault and his surveillance books and the power book. He has The Power/Knowledge, Selected Interviews and Other Writings, and Discipline and Punishment, The Birth of the Prison System. Foucault talks about how the prison system is very much like the school system. There's authority, they're telling students what to do, when to do it. It's a very structured system versus Durkheim. He brought up society, beliefs, and values in La Education Morale and Education and Sociology, and that, a student is supposed to be doing this type of work, and, they'll grow up thinking that that's what they're supposed to be doing. As far as evolution of education goes, like I said, it has changed a lot from the one-room school system to a much bigger system. I mean, Saratoga alone has 5 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and 1 high school, and even I graduated with over 650 students. As far as all in this together goes, I found it's not just the guidance counselor's job to make the student's life a success. It's the parents, the teachers, and the students themselves. The students have to be motivated to be able to get their work done, and guidance counselors play a big role in helping them stay organized in things, but it's only if the student wants it. And so I thought that was very interesting as I was looking through my research that, it's really not all on the administrators and the school. It takes a whole system to, go into the military, choose a different career path, or go into college. And it takes a whole team to open up a student to a new version of society norms to talk about their problems as well. The school system is not perfect by any means. There's tons of things that could change as far as disabilities, LGBTQ, but I'm sure that will change over time. But I thought that was most interesting about the "we're all in this together" conclusion. And then I have my citations. Thank you.